Ray, how do you select who you mentor? Because you only got so much time to give.
Well, I think, there's a few principles of effective mentorship I'll start with as well. I think there's a separation between mentorship and directing, so you have to be aware of what the difference is. And mentorship involves a lot of active listening. It's a two-way thing. It's not hierarchical. It's more collaborative. So you have to be able to understand the difference and apply that in your role as a mentor. And the mentee as well have to have certain expectations. If you're coming into it to get contacts or to get introductions, that's not mentorship either. So be aware that it's a long-term relationship. It's not a one-time transactional thing. I think clarity on outcomes is sort of a corollary of that, is that you have to understand what the mentor wants to get out of it and what the mentee wants to get out of it. And I think, as Dan said, there's a lot of two-way learning that occurs as a mentor. And by explaining things, you can learn how to do things better yourself. And I think that's really insightful. Having that awareness of why you want to come in is important. For my part, in the early days of BioWare, I didn't have access to a lot of great resources locally. I wish I did, and I actually, part of the reason I'm mentoring now is because I want to help fill that gap. And the good news for everybody here is there's a ton of great resources locally. Tech Edmonton, Startup Edmonton, a bunch of other great organizations that are working across the city. The U of A Venture Mentoring Service is a new one. And I think when you tap into all those, you're going to get different things from different ones. But go into it with clear expectations as what you need as a mentee. And that's going to evolve over time too. So realize it's not a static thing. It's going to be an evolutionary relationship. It'll transform depending on what your needs are, where you're at in your history, your trajectory, and where the mentors are at and what they can give and what they want to get out of it as well. Make sure you have time to dedicate. So it's not just in a longitudinal fashion. It's also make sure you're able to commit, you're able to follow through, you're able to prepare, you're able to plan, you're able to deliver the stuff that you need to get maximal benefit out of it. So those things said, when you select who you mentor, you want to first find people that are going to commit to those kinds of principles and understand what mentorship is and work within that framework. For me, there's generally a couple different kinds of mentorship. There's sort of the more informal kind that's sort of ad hoc. People come up to me and ask me questions. I'm always trying to help. And if somebody wants to do a call, typically I'll say, yeah, if you want to chat, I'll try and find the time. If it's something related to angel investment, I'll try and make the time. And I'll try and, even if in the first few minutes I know that I'm probably not going to likely be able to invest, I'll still try to make it valuable for that group. I'll try and give them feedback. So that's sort of the one type, a little more informal, less structured. And then there's the formal programs that I get involved in, like VMS, that has guidelines and principles and structure and a little bit more rules and rigor around it. And I think that's, for me, is generally a little more effective as the mentorship. Because that application allows you to get more out of it, and it kind of reinforces those principles I mentioned.
So along the lines with Ray, I mean, with VMS, there's an interesting screening process that goes through. So all the candidates that come through there, or the little organizations that show up, have been pre-screened. They're very eager. So when you get into a relationship at that level, it's very clear what the expectations are both ways.
For me, and I would probably define formal, informal different, because I've never been part of a program such as VMS where it's structured. But, I get a lot of people will come up to me and say, hey, will you mentor me? And my first question all the time is, what does that look like? What is that successfully done look like to you? Because, as you said, unless those expectations are really, really clear, it makes it very tough for me to know what's expected and if I'm meeting that. And so a lot of times that's the end of the conversation, because we got this idea in our head that mentorship's a good thing, but we don't even know what we think it should look like. And if they can't tell me what it looks like successfully, for me then that becomes an informal mentorship where, we'll go for coffee and I'll give you feedback. Where I find great value is when we can articulate that, because where I feel the value is when somebody can say, I want you to expose in me blind spots. I want to expose in me things that I don't see. And I'm open to that, even though I won't like the conversation all the time. And so when we can set that up, for me, that's a big part of it. I look for some alignment in the relationship and core values, the things they're striving to get out of their business or whatever that parameter is. But, that's the biggest thing for me in deciding who to mentor, is if they can articulate clearly what they're expecting as far as, you know, output from me and input of my time, and that, when we can get past that part, if I can buy into that, then I'm willing to mentor.
Right.